And welcome to In-Game Chat for Saturday, September 20th, 2014. This is Season 8, Episode 38. I'm Scott.
I'm James.
I'm Dennis.
And I'm RJ.
And together we are, if you'd like to get in touch with us, our phone number is 334-272-9228. That number again is 334-272-9228. Check out ingamechat.net for all the links to get in touch with us. You can find us on Twitter at InGameChat. You can find us over on Facebook. You can email us, everyone, at ingamechat.net. We're streaming the cam feed right now on Twitch. Head over to twitch.tv, look for In-Game Chat. You'll find us right there. And you can join in the chat room live while we broadcast. As you'll notice, Nathan is not here with us tonight. Sudden change in his plans, and we wish he could have been, but he is not. Our phones still work, so you can still call in. Just let it ring. And we will answer it as soon as we can. The number again is 334-272-9228. Welcome everybody in the chat room. Welcome everybody here in the studio. How was everybody's week? I'm going to start with RJ and Dennis, since I pretty much know how the week between me and James has gone. Let's start with Dennis. Anything new with you?
Nothing really new. I just play my regulars, just more Binding of Isaac, more Kingdom.
Did you get into that Smash Brothers stuff on the DS?
I didn't. I just haven't
because I heard a lot of people were doing that.
Yeah, a lot of people trading codes on eBay and the like, because it was like everybody who got eligible for that offer got 4 codes, 1 for themselves and 3 to share with friends.
Codes for what?
A demo of Smash Brothers for the 3DS.
So if you purchased it, you had 4 codes to distribute for a demo?
I don't remember if it was a pre-order or if it was like something they did through Club Nintendo.
It was viral, like, wasn't it? Like somebody got access to it and had codes to give to friends, and as soon as they activated theirs, they got codes to give. Oh wow!
I didn't know.
I don't know. I am guessing.
I thought it was just like, here's 4 codes, 1 for you, 3, and for 3 friends, and some people decided those 3 friends would be buyers on eBay for a demo.
Sure.
And
wow.
I think this week is when it actually goes out to everybody. Everybody can get them. So, hey, if you want Smash Bros. That badly, sure.
Yeah, W. Matthews says it came out for everybody on Friday.
Okay.
Club Nintendo.
But no, I haven't gotten in on that. I need to look into that. But no, I've just been really busy this week, so just my old regulars. Aside from those, I've started playing through Darkness 2 again on the PC.
Right, you had mentioned that. I think you had mentioned that, or said you were going to be.
Yeah, previous show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've played through on standard difficulty. I'm trying to go through on the hardest one, since it has a New Game Plus option on there.
Mm-hmm.
And tried one called The Yogg, which is more of a story than gameplay. Kind of like you basically
The Yogg? What are you talking about?
It is a game on Steam. And it's one where you basically take these characters, they're in this town, and there's a disaster coming that nobody knows about. So what you do is you play these characters, go to different places in town and do activities for like 6 weeks in the game.
Okay.
Basically building up stats and the like.
All right.
Disaster happens, and then you decide how these characters rebuild the town. Are they going to be the leader, the builder? And it's mostly just text. It's mostly just telling a story.
Right. And
the results of your choices, just kind of very bare bones in that regard. But I guess a gameplay session of that was about 7 or 8 minutes, and most of that was just reading the text following what choices I made.
Mm-hmm.
and it was like one of those ones that picked up on Steam sale really cheap, and I enjoyed it. I think it's worth the brief amount of time, or if you like seeing multiple iterations of the same story, go through it several times.
Before we jump into URJ, just letting everybody know that coming up at the top of our second hour, in just about 50 minutes or so, we're going to have Dan Dixon on. He is the creator of Universe Sandbox, and also, of course, Universe Sandbox 2, which I think is in alpha right now. Early access, you can buy into it and actually play it. But we're all big fans of space, and I'm a big fan of that game, Universe Sandbox. I believe I bought you a copy.
I believe you did.
And I bought...
I think you did buy me a copy
maybe
as well.
you a copy as well. I've bought copies for people of that game. Just a big fan of what it can do and what it does and all the different things that are available to you with it. Fascinating thing. Not necessarily a game, but a Universe Sandbox. So we'll have him on the show. He's going to be calling into the show, so we'll be talking with him live at the top of our second hour. Over to RJ. Anything new with you?
Booted up the Dreamcast again, started playing some old classics, got in touch with Zombie Revenge, and started playing a little bit of Ikaruga as well. Played some more of that, had a good time with that. And then, as I said last week, I got in touch with a friend of mine, and we went through the run-through of how to get Phantasy Star Online 2 to play on the PC, so I finally got that up and running. So I started working on that, trying to play through story mode, did a little side mission with my friend of mine online, and got a few levels up on that. But it's kind of a chore really right now because I'm still trying to figure out some of the story. It's not all translated. Most of it is translated, but not all of it because of the new episode 3 that came out. I mean, I'm a little behind. I mean, the game's been out for 2+ years, and I'm way behind on everything. I'm trying to get
PSO2 is Japan only? Or is it Japan only, or is it regional? Is it an Asian region thing? Is
in
it
the Asian region, there's Japan's got theirs, and there's a version for I think Singapore, but that's strictly for that area. And I mean, they won't let anybody else in. But Japan, you can get in on with the right programs and the right proxies and everything.
I've read a brief description of how to do it. Most of the description focusing on how difficult it is to do it, how much of a pain it is to actually do account management. And associate that with the game you're trying to play.
Yeah, right now the hardest thing to me was getting the CAPTCHA.
Sure.
You got 5
to prove that you're a human.
Yeah, prove you're human. Type these 5 Japanese symbols in here.
Oh man.
Okay, so and there was a message way around that. Say, okay, go to this website. It's the hiragana keyboard. Match these symbols with this, and then see if you can get close to it. I got close maybe 3-4 times. Botched on one letter. Each one. I mean, I got real familiar with one letter. I mean, I know this letter. I know this letter in a heartbeat. I can do this in my sleep.
It's so interesting to me that they haven't found the wherewithal at all to port something like that. It's not even. No, it's not a port. It's a PC game. Mm-hmm. There's no. You don't port it to the Americas. You just release it. You localize it, and there is an awful lot to be said for localization. Yeah. I do understand that there are unseen and often impassable difficulties in getting something from getting the publishing rights for something out of one region and into another. But we've done it 100,000 times, probably literally on other titles in other places. It's got to be somebody who'd be willing to help out in that regard. Yeah. But as you say, it's been out for 2 years, over 2 years.
Over 2 years.
And you said they're on their third.
It's a third episode.
Are these paid releases, or are they?
No, it's
Are they free content?
It's free to play. The game is free to play. It's just certain things you can get with. I think they have an art cache system. You can
right. So the content itself is not these episodes. That content isn't something that you pay for. I mean, a lot of free to play games will give you the basic game, and they require that you pay for additional chapters.
Yeah, you get the raw basics, but there's certain stuff you can pick up. The free account, the premium account. You know, of course, certain things are open to you when you have the premium account available to you.
Okay. So, that's a weird. See, it's still interesting to me. It's still very astonishing to me that, in recent years, and I don't want to lump Phantasy Star Online in with proper MMOs, but I think we all understand that line is clearly being blurred, or rather, the term is being stretched to cover any number of different things. But it is interesting to me that, yes, more and more publishers, more and more games are pushing toward a free-to-play model, and there were people who were champions of that idea away from pure subscription, away from the repeating cost of buying into a new expansion pack every 6 months to 2 years, something like that. But what is interesting is the number of different types of free-to-play models there are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Some of them would have you have the game for free, but then buy all of the additional chapters or story packs or mini expansions, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
Guild Wars has begun doing something like awfully strange with their story updates, their seasonal story updates. If you log into the game when it activates, while it is the current story, it is forever marked as a part of the content that you own, the things that you own. But if you miss it and you ever want to have access to it later, you got to buy it in their store. Things like that are things like that are a little bit weird. There's all of this very strange. Nobody has settled into the free-to-play model. There is no the free-to-play model.
Mm-hmm.
It is an array of models.
A lot of different iterations on
constant
what
experimentation.
Was essentially getting towards this goal of
right.
having one plan.
The goal is like a matrix move. It's to have one hand on the money at all times and constantly flip through the air, contort your body, and dodge all of the accusations of pay to win. But you must always keep one hand on the money. You must always make income while trying to avoid accusations of using a ruinous model, something that is like degrades the gameplay, degrades the experience. Because it doesn't matter what you do. Everyone's going to come at you with pay to win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I really do sort of wish that were over here. It would be a nice to foreshadow, future discussions. It would be a really, really nice salve on the sort of worried minds of the people who really wish Destiny was on the PC right now, because they share a lot in common. They share a lot of ideas in common, and that style of game isn't particularly common at the moment. So it'd be nice to see it on the PC here. Destiny's not on PC. That's okay. I'll play PSO2. Would have been a good time to release it on the PC in America.
Yeah, it would have. There was also something that came up, playing on the keyboard initially at first, then trying to play on the keypad. Getting an analog joystick to works fine. From what I heard, the 360 and the Xbox One works fine with it. But I've never been able to get used to that configuration on a 360 control pad. The one analog stick in the upper left-hand corner of the D-pad, right next to the right analog stick. I've never been able to get used to that. I've always been used to the PlayStation setup for years, despite the fact that I'm playing on a Dreamcast.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
The original, even though it only had the one, it was in the Xbox style of asymmetrical left stick above the D-pad.
Yeah. So despite that, I still couldn't get used to it. So there was a program a friend of mine told me about called DS3, I believe. It lets you hook your
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, PlayStation controller to the PC. I'm not sure. I think I got the name right, but that's what he told me about.
There are. I don't know if they are individual programs. I believe there are several different programs that are employed. There is not a PlayStation controller that cannot be made to work on the PC. If you have a certain preference for a certain vintage of controller, going all the way back to the original non-analog and all the way up to the DualShock 4.
Well, yeah, I got my. I was thinking maybe I could finally get some use out of that wired Mad Catz controller I had for the PS3 years ago. The one that was rendered useless with the new update, PlayStation update. It was
when did that happen? When did they?
It was like Mad Catz.
Is this an old update when it was rendered useless?
It was an old update. It was years ago. Mad Catz made a wired PS3 controller. It was like $10. And it worked wonderfully on the system. Okay. And then about 2 weeks later, PlayStation had an update for the system. It's like it was like the early 4s or the late 3s, one of the two. But as soon as I put that update on there, that Mad Catz controller wouldn't work on the system anymore.
Oh.
So I didn't understand why, but maybe some security issues or something they didn't like or something expired. I don't know. But that thing was useless after that. Could never use it. So maybe I can get it used again on a PC because I still
got it. It was USB controller, right?
USB controller, yeah.
Plug it in.
Plug it in and see what happens.
PC will normally figure out what to do with the USB thing pretty quick. And if it doesn't, then you probably shouldn't be plugging it in anymore.
Yeah, but that's pretty much what I've been working on playing game-wise this week.
All right. You guys were talking about Five Nights at Freddy's first.
Yeah,
We were talking
that.
about that before the
Have
show.
any of you playing that?
I have not played it. I've been watching live streams.
I've watched a lot of live streams of it, but I've actually bought it and played the first night. I haven't got around to playing the rest of the nights yet, but I do intend to play that. Try to get at least through the first 5 nights, and then try 6 and 7.
All right. So how's that been going with the first one?
The first night's very simple, very easy. All you have to do is keep your wits about you and make sure you conserve your power. But then the later nights, when they start coming at you in droves and force, that's when you start the running out of power, getting the jump scare, because the jump scare is coming. It's just, can you prevent it from happening? But this night 7 is the one that the achievement of the real goal for the game. Night 7 at 2020 mode, which is basically the AI level is 0 to 20, 0 being very easy, 20 being maximum.
Yeah, you explained this for a show. After the titular 5 nights, you got a night 6. You get 2 extra nights.
Yeah, you got a night 6, and if you beat that, you get night 7. And night 7 is one where you can set the AI for all 4 characters up to level 20. And when all of them are at level 20, they're constantly coming at you at your door. And the hardest thing about it is trying to keep the power from going out before 6 a.m. But the last videos I saw of people actually beating it, they almost always like ran out of power and just waiting for the time to turn from 5 to 6, and they just barely made it. Almost always at like 1 or 2% before they get through it or get caught. One of the two.
Did any of you watch the? Was it the PT concept trailer, or was it the Silent Hills concept?
It was a
trailer?
Silent Hills teaser trailer.
Was that the teaser?
Maybe something. The most recent trailer, the one that is now maybe 3 days old.
Yeah. Did any of you guys watch that?
I saw something about it. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Well, checkbox number 1.
I know.
Orphanage / nursery / children's home / ghostly crying children. Thanks.
Right.
Automatic horror threshold is at 80% or something.
I remember
immediately.
What game was it? Painkiller?
Yes. It was
that had the orphanage?
That had the orphanage, yeah. I was like, nope.
We're like automatically when we go in there, it's like, oh, God, it's an orphanage. Orphanage or mental institution?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get the same kind of thing. Noises and just things that are just creepy.
Then you get the combination like you had in Thief 3.
At the cradle.
Yeah, the cradle.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the name.
That's a level I've never played, but I've heard plenty about.
The mental institution itself obviously is based on certain very specific fears, psychological fears. I have never exactly understood why the nursery or the orphanage or something like that
is creepy.
Writ wrong, like demonstrated as an uncomfortable, as a terrible place.
Yes, like I was always something uncomfortable about dead children, or
inherently that's a really, really, really uncomfortable concept. But I feel like it's tapping into something else.
Kind of tapping at a point where it's like, if there are children there, they are wrong somehow. But as far as they're concerned, they're right. Yeah,
it's a very strange thing. I know that it's creep factor when used in films, obviously, is one thing, but it is still very similar in a game, and I've never really stopped to think much about it. You never interact with them, It's not for all of what amounts to a lot of hot air about what types of people video game players are. Like, nobody ever has you assaulting children.
No.
In a game like this, even under horror circumstances, they don't ever do it. So it isn't that you are about to be assaulted yourself necessarily. It isn't like that. It's not like they're an enemy. It's just that it's like it's a harbinger of scary stuff, and I can't exactly put my finger on why. If Alma in the first Fear game had been just like a creepy woman and not like a creepy, I don't know what she was supposed to be, like 8 or something like that, as a specter, as a ghost, would not have had anything like the same effect.
Yeah. For those babies in Dead Space.
The babies in...
them.
That was...
I think the backstory was they were like clones, but essentially they were babies as far as...
Basically they're babies.
It's very unpleasant. And I think, and I understand that there are certain people, obviously people who have children are going to have a very specific reaction to that.
Yeah.
But even still, there's something fundamental about it. And like when I started watching that trailer, I was like, no, here we are.
Yeah.
We are here. Roaches coming out of the wall. That's unpleasant. That's very, very bad.
Yeah. Somebody mentions Dante's Inferno, which had unbaptized babies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If you for certain levels of horror, that was more.
Nothing
that
about
was a-
Dante's Inferno
it
scared me.
It
was
didn't
so
scare you. It was
scary,
all
no.
about. I mean, obviously, it had a specific theme
Yeah.
that it was
Yeah.
trying to build around. It had something that it had to reference in particular. So
That was a lust level, wasn't it? Cleopatra at the end.
I don't remember. I did not.
It's been a
beat
minute
the
since
game.
I played
Yeah,
that. I think
okay.
so, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is yes, I saw that trailer and remembered that it is that time of year, isn't it?
I saw the first couple of seconds of that trailer, and I was like, "Yeah," with the sound off. By the
Oh,
way,
did you?
yes.
When the ball rolls into the room, I was
Oh,
like,
as soon as the ball, like I
okay.
saw the ball roll, and then it rolled and opened the
Okay.
door, and that's when I was like, not going any further.
Oh,
You
I need
opened a
to-
door.
I need to check this
Not
out.
tonight.
Nope.
Which Silent Hills have you guys played?
I have only played
First
the first
one.
two.
First one.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
2 is the only one I
No,
played.
2. I've only played 2.
Same here. I've only
That
played
was
If-
the
if
one-
If you're going to play just one, that's the one.
That was
probably-
the one that
Man,
hit.
still the best one to play.
I
That was the
don't
one that
know,
came out
though.
on Xbox, I believe. Was Silent Hill
Did it?
2?
2 did eventually. It originally
played
came
it
out on PS2.
Oh no, I understand that.
Yeah.
But
it
it
did
got an
come out on
Xbox
Xbox.
release
It
is
did,
where I played it at.
And it did get an part of the HD release that came out last year, I think.
Which,
Yeah.
Right.
which one was the movie? It was based on 2, wasn't it?
The first movie was based on one,
Based-ish on one, I believe.
with cameo by Pyramid Head because he
Okay.
was the breakout
Okay.
star of 2. And then-
okay. Yeah, 2 is the only one I played. Yeah.
I played one. Obviously, it was an incredibly exciting thing to have. In what was that? 99.
Yeah, it was first time.
I want to. All I remember is at 1998 E3. I went there with some friends and we made our way into the Konami booth, and it was Metal Gear Solid everywhere on 30 screens. The entire pavilion itself was designed to look a little bit like the intro level. There were people dressed up in military outfits, and on a single screen in the corner was Silent Hill. And I remember gravitating towards it, and just zeroing in on the atmosphere, because it was something that hadn't quite been presented. It stood out immediately, even from things like the Resident Evil series. It was not an action-based game, so I was really drawn to it there. I liked 2, but not. Strangely, after playing it, I just had no more interest in the series. No more
Yeah,
at all.
it's interesting because 2 is its own thing as far as that
Right.
goes. And as far as interconnected, 1 and 3 are the ones that are really kind of joined at the hip story-wise.
Right.
The rest are all kind of standalone or just kind of tangentially related to other plot threads.
Yeah, the only one I played a little bit of was at E3, and that was for the one with where everything was ice.
Shattered Memories.
Shattered Memories.
That was a. Depending on who you ask, that was essentially a retelling of the first game because it is Harry Mason again. That was really good, and that's about all I can say without spoiling something.
Yeah,
in
no,
that
that's
game.
fine. I'd rather you not, even though I know it's
It's-
quite long past that.
It is worth me not spoiling it.
Right.
And go look it up on like PS2 or I think it was on PSP as well. And the
Because
Wii.
you know what? One day that might get a Steam release, and it might be for like
Yeah.
$5, and I'll have it in my library.
It's not a long game. It is.
well,
it
that
is
was
fairly
was
short.
that a Wii only title?
It was originally a Wii only title, and then it eventually got a release on PS2 and PSP.
Okay, good. Going to the phones right now. I already put him through because, by the way, if you call in 334-272-9228, if I put you on hold, you're not going to be able to hear the show. So I went ahead and put him through so we could continue to hear the conversation. Zufu is calling in. Hey, man, you're on the air.
All right, thanks for having me. Hey, guys.
Hey.
How you doing?
Thanks for calling.
Good, thanks. I just wanted to touch a bit on some interesting points about PT and what made it stand out in this kind of dry spell we've been having of so-called survival horror, but it just being survival horror by name. Like a lot of the Resident Evil 5, 6, the whole idea of, survival horror has kind of gone away, and I think PT kind of brought it back. Just a few points. One of the things was just like no hype, just play. It was announced like right on stage, go play it. There was no.
Yeah, I love the way that they did it.
Right.
I love the way they did that whole thing.
And to me, that kind of reminds me that, you don't need to have a huge marketing team. If the content is good, the word will spread. Like in the social connected generation, you don't need to have multi-billion-dollar, advertising teams. If the game is good, it will be heard. People will find out about it.
We should clarify really quickly. PT is the playable teaser, which was possibly not directly related, but is related to Silent Hills.
Yeah,
and it was a playable PS4 only, downloadable, sort of isolated teaser. It was not a section of the game, which often happens with demos, that's sort of cut out that you play, and it just sort of stops at a point. It was a perfectly self-contained thing that is designed to tease conceptually the idea of Silent Hills, which is the trailer that we were just talking about. So,
yeah, and the entire This Is Silent Hills was like a hidden part of that demo/experience.
You had
right?
to figure out how to beat it.
Okay.
And there was a lot of speculation on how that works and everything else, and I'm not necessarily sure that a definitive way ever came about, but numerous ways have been found, and to get that ending so that you can see basically the teaser or whatever it was for Silent Hills. So go ahead, Zufu.
Oh, yes, those are all definitely good points. And just a few more that I wanted to add was the fact that you have limited interaction. You can't defend yourself. There's no guns, there's no ammo, there's no loadout screen. You're basically just forced to go through an experience, and all you can do is just zoom in. And that really takes away your ability to defend yourself, and that kind of vulnerability, like that plays on you in terms of the mentality of the game, and I really like that.
Yeah. Well, that is something that they've explored. Not all games do it.
Shattered Memories did that. I don't know about how PT played exactly. I haven't played it myself, but Shattered Memories, when you had the nightmare sequences, essentially, the only thing you could do was run. You occasionally found a flare that you could throw down to kind of stall the enemies from chasing you, but it was just a running sequence. You couldn't fight back or anything.
The thing that I'm mostly remembering here is from both Fear and Condemned. Whenever you would make an action, the game would take over that action, and you were not able to, say you were opening a door or going down a ladder or something
stepping over a barrier, something like that.
Yes.
That was particularly horrible.
An animation had to play out that you had no control over. How fast you moved over it, or how fast you went down the ladder, or you could look around while you're going down the ladder or moving across. No, it was always a fixed position of your viewpoint.
POV.
And you couldn't escape it. Basically,
No,
you were
couldn't.
forced.
And what made that in particular, that special thing so terrifying, was that you had agency in pretty much the rest of the game, and then you would take an action and have that control, have your viewpoint taken away from you. And I would say probably a quarter of the time, something really unpleasant would happen, but not often enough that you grew immune to it, or you grew to know that it was going to happen, so you could just brace yourself for it. You expected it, but you were let off the hook just often enough to let your guard down by the time it happened again.
Yeah, I was when I was at PAX, hanging out at the Warner Brothers area. Some guy come over and just said, "Hey, how are you? My name's this," that sort of thing. And he did video work for them. He would do video work for trailers for the Warner Brothers games, and he had done the video work for Shadow of Mordor, which is a Monolith game, which I believe is who did Condemned.
Was that Monolith?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Condemned. And he's like, "Hey, do you like that stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, I like that." And he's like, "You did that?" And he was talking about working for Monolith and that sort of thing. I was like, "I really want to Condemn 3. He's like, I hear that a lot, actually. I said, "Yeah, we really want to Condemn 3. So, hopefully that can happen.
I never played 2, so I don't know.
We played a little bit of 2, I thought.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I remember.
We did a little bit of the multiplayer at your house at one point.
I remember. I remember the first one very clearly. I remember going all the way through it.
Right,
I thought it was really excellent. I remember everything about it. I don't have much memory.
2
of
had some moments, but I mean, there was a lot of in
Right.
it as well.
Still, I'd like him to go back to
yeah,
it.
I would pay money for Condemned 3 in the hopes of a good Condemned 3 at least.
Go ahead, Zufu. Sorry.
Oh, no problem, guys. I also just wanted to just say that there's 2 more points. One is that there's fear through atmosphere, and I really like that because a lot of times games nowadays are just trying to work off of jump scares. Where Kojima, I think he says that just the fact that nothing happens and you're just in a bad situation, Like, your imagination can make up like the worst things than what a person can do to scare you. So just being in an empty area and letting your imagination and the atmosphere settle in, that's enough to generate fear. So it's like fear through simplicity in a way. Instead of having to be elaborate and go all out, it's like just the idea of being in a bad situation and let your mind like mess with you. And I really like that.
If what the playable teaser was showing us was an intention to use all of those concepts in the final version of the game, then it is likely going to be fantastic. I like to think I'm one of my favorite points in general about where gaming is now is the first point that you made. I believe that these companies have done the math on what the marketing buys them. But I also think for mid-range titles in particular, your point is absolutely correct. You don't have to have a marketing budget that matches your development budget for a lot of these games. Just put them out there. You have to have the right platform from which to launch. And you have to do it super clean and super good. But if the right thing came out at the right time and someone said, oh, by the way, here's this.
Yeah.
This thing that you weren't even aware of, or maybe you were vaguely aware of it. It's here now. You would, as long as you are not desperately scraping to try to make back as much of your development costs, as much of those sunk costs on your first day with your pre-orders and your pre-sales, I think you could expect an excellent return, particularly since you would not have spent an enormous amount of money on your marketing. It's something that I really want to see someone try in the commercial space on a large scale. So, but I think this is proof. I think it's absolutely proof that this could work, and it's something I've thought for a long time. So I agree with you completely.
Now, the last point to just kind of round it out is that I think maybe my favorite one is that there was no hand-holding. Like, you just dropped into the demo, and you're basically left to fend for yourself. No pointing arrows, no shiny objects to tell you what to do. And that kind of just harkens back to the old school where you just figure it out. Like, you have to kind of just keep trying with it and get stuck for days, weeks. But when you figure it out, it's so satisfying compared to like a game just giving you hints and constantly making it easier and easier for you just so that you can move forward.
Right.
Sometimes I'm a fan of that sometimes, and sometimes I'm not. It all depends. But yeah, I agree with you.
I'm always a fan of it. It doesn't... Sometimes I'm frustrated by my own inability to solve the puzzle, but I'm always a fan of the effort. I'm always a fan of that kind of design. I think it is incredibly important to give your player or your viewer or your listener, whatever type of media you're doing, to give them the tools they need to make sure they absolutely have what they need to solve your mystery, to follow your story, to understand what it is you have on offer. But it's important to respect their intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It works really, really well when you do. So, again, I agree. All of your points are absolutely perfect in my opinion.
That's all I have, guys. Thanks for your
time.
Thank you very much for your call.
Thanks for calling in.
All right, take care.
And if you'd like to get in touch with us, our number is 334-272-9228. Don't forget, like I said, coming up at the top of our second hour, we're going to be talking with Dan Dixon, who is the creator and project lead for Universe Sandbox and Universe Sandbox 2, which is currently in alpha. And I think it's in alpha, but it's on early access on Steam. You can go ahead and pick it up.
I believe it's in the public alpha right now.
Yeah, public alpha. I'm going to talk with him. He's going to be calling into the show. If you've got questions, throw them in the chat room, and during the interview. Don't throw them in there right now, but throw them in during the interview. And of course, we've got some Steam keys for this that we'll be giving away during the interview as well. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back with more in-game chat. Here is music from Fallout 3. We'll be right back. It's coming. And welcome back to In-Game Chat music there from Advent Rising. We're going to jump right back into the phones and go straight to W. Matthew, who's calling in, actually bringing up two topics that James and I briefly mentioned on the way up here as to what we might talk about. W. Matthew's going to talk to him about us now. Hit whichever one you want to hit first, NVIDIA or Oculus? Which one?
You kind of have to start with NVIDIA because a lot of the GTX 900 series cards they announced also is related to the Oculus stuff.
Okay. To begin with, what did they announce? I only was able to follow the details from afar.
They basically announced the GTX 900 series cards, which, based on the leaked metrics, is about 20% more powerful than the 700 series cards, and about the same or slightly more powerful than a Titan.
Okay.
Also, what is probably more important there is not the actual hardware specs of the card, but those cards use about half the power as the previous generation of cards.
That's the 980? No,
the 980 and the 970.
Yeah.
Yeah. They use half the power.
I saw one of those charts, where they show the different cards, and then they also go ahead.
Ignore that because it compares it to the 600 series, not the 700 series. They just wanted to do that to make it look better than it was. It's about 20-ish% is the difference.
Mm.
It uses about half the power, which is a good thing.
I was just basically what I was talking about with that chart was that the and I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to get it wrong again. The 980 obviously is the high-end $500 card, and the 970 is that the other card?
Yeah.
Yeah. The 970 is like a $350 card, I think, or something like that. But the stats compared to each of them are kind of close, and not obviously not significantly close, but the $300 card seems like a fantastic, what am I trying to think of? Not pricey card, affordable, high-end
price performance card.
Price performance card, yeah. That's what I was looking for.
Precisely where AMD, with the Radeon line, has been aiming for years.
Mm-hmm.
So to have a relatively comparatively affordable NVIDIA part is a good thing. They've always run a little bit more expensive.
The thing to keep in mind there largely is, as I think everyone kind of knew when they announced the Titan, it's like just wait a year and a half and you'll get the same power in a cheaper card.
Yeah.
A significantly cheaper card. And also, really, the cards themselves are not a huge power increase. If you have the 600 series upgrade, if you have a 700 series card, you can wait and ignore.
Right.
I have a 600 series card.
You have a 680?
I got a 680, yeah.
Right.
You probably should upgrade. But that being said, there are a couple of features on that card that are clear. First, we'll start with the obvious one, which is the announcement of a new anti-aliasing type, the MFAA, which apparently, if we are to believe what they said, does the same job as MSAA with half of the resources being used.
That's a nice claim. That's a wonderful thing that I think a lot of us would very much like to believe.
Yeah.
And the other, again, leading into the Oculus stuff, is built into the card itself is asynchronous time warp.
Okay.
Which I suspect most of you and even your listeners aren't going to know. Time warping is the ability to adjust the pixels of a rendered frame at the last possible millisecond to make it more accurate to your inputs.
Okay.
And asynchronous time warp is the idea that you can make if your system cannot render the next frame fast enough, update the previous frame without re-rendering it.
Okay.
Which ends up helping significantly reduce the amount of resources you need, particularly in something Oculus in VR, which is a big system-intensive thing to do.
So I guess it's a fair thing to say then that that's most likely going to be the best pairing. Then, if you're the kind of person who's looking to spend real money on the best experience you can have on your PC, this is going to be one. And is this asynchronous time warping? Is it something that they can do in software that we're going to see in previous iterations of their hardware? Okay.
It is
How far back is it going to support it?
It is not going to. NVIDIA is not going to build it into the drivers for previous cards, but you will see it in development API in the Oculus API.
Okay.
You'll see any developer can implement it and use it if they want. The difference here is it's being built into the card.
Mm-hmm.
And not just as a piece of software.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting as far as its integration with the Oculus.
Yeah, it's not an Oculus specific feature.
Right, I know.
How it's built for VR. That's its purpose. Like that entire series of cards, to me, comes off as we are building this for VR specifically.
And what was the news on the Oculus? It apparently was today. There was something announced.
Yeah, unfortunately, all they've said is it's significantly better. They haven't released the specs of it, but they announced a new prototype called the Crescent Bay.
Crescent Bay, yeah.
Yeah.
Which they haven't said is going to be DK3, the development kit 3.
Right.
No, they haven't.
But they also specifically said that this is continuous movement towards the eventual consumer release. So I think it's safe to say that this will be the next iteration of the development kit.
I could see this kind of turning in, more than likely, this turning into the consumer one.
At this point, I feel like I'm caught in a really bad space. I don't want to invest the significant amounts of money it can take to get a proper VR setup. And I know that of the many, many things people really are trying to do, of the many individual types of apps people are trying to lay into the VR space, I already know what my use case is. And in 90% of, all of that time, it will be in a cockpit. I intend to sit in the cockpit of at least 9 different types of spaceships in 9 different types of spaceship games.
But which one's the best?
Which one's the best? Whichever one has the biggest budget, apparently.
This needs to be said because it's a misconception that I think a lot of people don't realize. The Rift looks like it's going to be about $300. That is not the expensive part. The expensive part of VR is the system capable of running it.
Yeah. Yes.
And people need to remember that. The Rift itself is cheap. It's the actual computer capable of using it that's not going to be.
Yeah, at $300, that puts it at roughly the level of a lot of some of your other core components of a high performance system. Cheaper than a really good video card.
It's going to be $300 to $400. I'm suspecting $349.
Right. So that puts it in the realm of a high end, one of your better Intel processors, a little bit more expensive than a really, really good high performance overclocking motherboard. You can get plenty. You can get plenty of things for cheaper. But if you're looking at a truly high performance system, it's another $350 thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a gaming computer, if it is a very a mid to high end computer, is a box filled with a dozen different components that cost $200 to $500. It's a box full of $300 things.
Yeah, you basically it's by all intent it looks like you're gonna have to spend about $1,500 on a computer that can do VR.
Yeah, I believe that, and that's frustrating, and that's on top of the fact that, I need that VR,
right? Yeah,
and I need that $150 to $175 flight stick. I need all of these individual components. I will probably construct myself out of plyboard and PVC pipe, a little fake cockpit or something to say. Like it's not just a thing you strap to your head and you're like, oh, amazing experiences, super fantastic. It's I don't know. It's yet another reason why PC gaming is an awful lot like owning a boat. It's something that you can always throw more money at it,
Right, yeah.
in terms of either raw performance or obviously things like this, things you can add onto it to make it even better so that it can do more and more things. And it scales really well. You can get by and have a really great time with a $500 or $600 PC. There's plenty of things you can do. This isn't one of them,
Yeah.
but
I'm going to say the comparison that I keep thinking of when I actually end up thinking of the whole transition to VR as a thing keeps making me jump back to the transition from the SNES to the N64, from 2D to 3D. Most SNES games looked better than N64 games. When you went from 2D to 3D, you had a massive base level of resource usage increase to achieve the same thing.
right, that's exactly right. And it is kind of an associate or a good comparison for a lot of these things. And to make a lot of leaps into a new type of rendering, a new type of display, to make something look even better, even as simple, and this is a relatively simple thing. I'm still living in a world of only playing on a 1080p monitor, because I know what it's going to cost in terms of resources to move up to just not 4K, right? Not an Infinity display like a single image stretched over 3 monitors or something, but a simple 1440p monitor. So that now everything I play, because it's essentially going to have to be played at that resolution, is going to require that much more. And I'm not willing to make the sacrifices in performance to reach that level of resolution. So even something as simple as doing that requires an enormous investment in resources, and obviously therefore an enormous investment in money. Even that's not something I'm willing to do at the moment.
W. Matthew, didn't you say you went to PAX?
Yeah, I did.
You tried some of the Oculus stuff, right? Was that your first time trying the Oculus stuff?
Yes, it was.
And your experience, how was that?
It was actually quite well. I definitely want it.
Okay.
I'm definitely going to end up...
That was my next question, was like, is this something that, we talk about the investment, we talk about owning a boat type thing. Is this something that you're going to put your money into?
Yes, because my system is on the low end of being able to do Oculus stuff, but it still is probably going to be able to do Oculus stuff from what I can tell. I've said it before, I have an i5 and a 770. If anything, I have to upgrade my CPU, but that's not a horrible upgrade if I have to do it. Everything else, I have 12 gigs of RAM. I'm really largely set. I even imagine my i5 is probably good enough to run it on medium and low.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of already there. The problem is, and this is the biggest challenge to adoption, is if you go to a lot of sites, my system, while it's on the low end of Oculus stuff capable, it is still 95 percentile of systems. Most people are still running dual core.
You're still on an i5, right?
I'm on a 2500K.
Okay, yeah.
The old i5 2500K,
Yeah.
which is like an all-time champion gaming computer CPU.
Yeah.
It's still just knocking it out of the park, but it does make me it does give me pause when I look at something like the Rift, and I think I want this, but I want it to be absolutely cherry. I want this experience to be the very best experience I can have, and I know that's not going to happen on the system I'm using right now.
I was going to say, most people, but that's the thing, is most end users don't even have an i5.
Oh,
most end users are still using a dual core, an Intel Core Duo.
Yeah, I know, and this has been one of the reasons why PC development in particular has moved in the direction it has. Why certain things have become really good performers because they focus on that, top, I guess, 10% of all PC owners, and recognize that for whatever part of the spectrum you fall into as a hardware owner, as a PC hardware owner. There kind of is something for you. But you're right. It always has been a question of very few people being at the top end of performance.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, on my way to, and I didn't get to tell this story the last time I called in, on my way to PAX, I was on the flight, and the person next to me that asked me where I was going, I said, "Oh, I'm going," I described the event, and the literal next question I was asked was about the Oculus Rift.
Huh. That's interesting.
Which kind of tells me that maybe the Rift has gotten more mainstream media exposure than we think it has.
Well, they were both on Facebook, right? That is the giant gaping artery to mainstream exposure.
I've heard of Facebook.
Right. It is absolutely one place you can guarantee is going to showcase something that they own, and they are going to let it. They're going to set it on its own, relatively unencumbered of anything that it didn't set out to do. They honestly have been quite good about that. And they're going to put it in the forefront, and they're going to expose as many people as they can to the idea. And legions of them are going to bounce right off of it as a concept. Even more are going to bounce off of it because of the cost. But I don't doubt for a minute that this is about to become a very well-known and well-understood and possibly heavily coveted thing. I don't know exactly how that's going to... I don't know how it's going to shake out. There is always the question that came up in the chat room. I think Zufu was asking, do we think this is the next big thing? Is Oculus, is the Rift, is VR the next big thing?
Or
is it a gimmick? And I don't think gimmick is fair exactly. I do think that whatever it turns out to be, however good your system, however good the VR, I think there are limited use cases.
Whether it is the next big thing or not, if you're someone who plays PC games, you want this to become at least big enough that it continues to force NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, all of these people to push their hardware.
Yeah.
Because that is the thing Oculus VR is doing. It is saying, hey, you think you have enough CPU resources? You think your GPU is good enough?
Right.
No, it ain't.
No, it isn't. And what's funny is your core resources in a gaming PC have been good enough for ages.
Yeah.
In the past, I never would have sat around on the hardware I have. And again, I made smart purchasing decisions. I got good advice from people at the right time. I like my core. The 2500K it's great. I have always done research and bought really good parts. I've got a 7970 video card. It performs great. It overclocks wonderfully. It is excellent. But I never would have considered myself capable of playing 99.9% of the things that are on the market for as long as I've been able to on hardware that is this old. The upgrade cycle in the past, even if you couldn't afford to do it, you recognize that you were you were down in the bottom end of the performance envelope pretty quickly if you didn't follow the upgrade treadmill. For years now, that's been unnecessary. And as you say, for good or ill, the Oculus Rift is a shot in the arm. Not to PC gaming. PC gaming is fine. It's more than fine. Mm-hmm. But to gaming PCs, to the hardware that we used to always claw after, to always that next upgrade, always that next improvement. So you are very right. It will be nice to have an outside factor or another force inside of the industry pushing it.
This is basically, the comparisons are accurate, it's basically about 1998 to about 2004 all over again. Yes. Developers are going to be hardware limited again, for good or ill.
Well, W. Matthew, I appreciate the call.
Yeah,
we got to take a break. Our interview is on hold at the moment. So thanks for calling in. We always appreciate it, man. And we're coming up. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got Dan Dixon on the phone, who is going to talk to us about Universe Sandbox 2, space, and all that fun stuff. We will be back with more in-game chat in just a minute. Here is music from Oblivion for you. We'll be right back. Awfully dramatic music for the next segment. Welcome back to In-Game Chat. That is music from Kingdom Hearts 2, The 13th Struggle. And welcome back to In-Game Chat. Right now on the phone with us, I am not exactly sure where he is calling from. We will ask him, but this is Dan Dixon on the phone. He is the project lead and creator of Universe Sandbox 2, and creator of Universe Sandbox as well. Dan, thanks for being on the show with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Where are you calling us from, by the way?
I'm in Seattle, Washington, the United States.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for doing this and for being on the show with us. I am a fan of your game, Universe Sandbox, and
thank you.
I did not even know you guys were doing a sequel until I saw it at PAX.
Oh, sweet.
Because apparently you had released, I guess, earlier that week, maybe?
Yeah, we just started selling it on our website. A few days before PAX. So you can buy a Steam code from our website. It activated on Steam. You can't yet buy it on Steam.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like our own early access. It's not actually on early access yet, but it's a Steam. You activate the code and get it on Steam. So it's kind of our way of kind of gating the number of users as we continue to improve it. So it's ready for those that can't stand it any longer. But we still want to make more improvements before it really gets featured. So
yeah, we're all big fans of space.
It's where we keep our stuff.
Yeah, it's where we keep our stuff. Exactly, and even going those who have listened to the show over the 8 years that we've been doing this probably understand that influence and how much we just love it, and even to the point that we had one of the guys who walked on the moon on our show once. Charlie Duke was his name. We had him on our show, and so yes, we're all lovers of space, and I take it that you are, and your team is as well.
Space is awesome. So it turns out our universe is more amazing than humanity ever imagined that it was. So, and as we continue to push the boundaries of discovery, we discover that it's even more amazing and bizarre and wonderful than we thought was possible. So yeah, reality is amazing. So.
Well, how did you get started with? Let's start with Universe Sandbox 1. I know that you want to talk about Universe Sandbox 2, and I do want to get to some of the improvements. But how did the concept of that ever come up? What brought that about?
Yeah, so a long time ago, my dad had downloaded a really simple gravity simulator, 2D, and I was kind of frustrated with the lack of options and features. Really basic, and I took it about. I was messing around with programming, and I wrote a really simple one. Spent a week or two on it. 5 years later, I came back to the idea, kind of started over again. New, better than the original one. Spent a couple of weeks on it. 5 years later, came back to it again. Another 5 years passes, and this past time, I just didn't stop working on it. It was a total personal project. I had no commercial ambition. I wasn't expecting to sell it. Mm-hmm. When I first started working on it, I wasn't intending to put it on the web. Then I'm like, this is like a year after about a year of work on it. I was like, I could use this as a portfolio piece to maybe get another job in the video game industry. Put it up on the web, and people started downloading it, and I tried. Allowed people to pay for it. That seemed to go pretty well. It was selling a couple copies a day, continues to improve it. I was making enough that I felt comfortable leaving my job at a small video game studio here in Seattle. Continued to work on it for another year and a half. Steam agreed to release it. This was 3 years ago, and then after that happened, it just totally took off.
I have bought more copies of Universe Sandbox for friends than I bought of any other. And I don't buy very many copies of games for people. But Universe Sandbox is one that I have bought for quite a few people. If I know that their interest is in space, and I see that they don't have that in their library, I will grab that, especially when it's on a Steam sale. I will grab that and be like, here you go. You'll love this.
Awesome. Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just gonna So it started as a gravity simulator, and just something that was entertaining to me, and the motions of the orbits is so fascinating, and yet the math behind it is actually really quite simple. I mean, if you if you're familiar with what you're doing and you know how to program and work in a 3D engine, you can get a very simple gravity simulator up and working in a weekend. But then, it was then kind of continuing to iterate and improve. Like, oh, well, what's that trail? Now let's make the object selectable. When you select the object, you can change the properties. Let's make the units all real units. Let's fix the problem with the camera when you move really far away and you get rounding point errors and problems. So just kind of this slow iteration of improvements on the original one over about 4 years, and that is what you see on Steam today with the original one. So it's like 2 years of part-time work and then about 2 years of full-time work, and that just basically just me on that. But yeah, so it started as a simple gravity simulator, and then once it was released on Steam and sales were quite good, I was like, oh, well, I could afford to hire a few people to help me make this more amazing and better than I could ever do by myself. And so I hired a couple people, and a couple of people in Germany that I knew through the internet, and they started helping me work on it. Anyways, yeah. So two then. Well, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. So, but yeah. So I mean, there's kind of the story of the first one. So it started as a simple gravity simulator, and just kind of just a slow iteration. So there was no grand vision at the end of like, oh, well, I wanted to do this or this or. Actually, I mean, I almost wonder if I could time travel back in time and show myself, show what. Well, gosh, even now the new one, or even what the original one became.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, I would have been like so overwhelmed that I would have been like, oh, there's no way I can do all this. I'm just going to give up. So, yeah. So, simple gravity simulator turned, and then the new one. I'll leave it there. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my next question was going to be, how do you explain to somebody who has no idea of what I hesitate to call it a game, but has no idea what to call your game, or how do you describe your game? I mean, how do you describe it to other people who?
Yeah, Universe Sandbox. It's a space and gravity simulator. So it's a simulator that I don't know. That's a good question. At its core, it's a gravity simulator that lets you manipulate the planet. So you can load up a scale. The way I usually describe it is a series of examples. So you can load up a scale of the solar system. You can drop another star in. You can watch that star rip the orbits of the planets away from the sun. You can load Saturn with its rings.
You can load black holes.
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can load up different kind of pre-existing simulations. But then
you can
also
pop another galaxy right into our solar system.
Yeah, you can
on
add
top
new
of our
bodies.
galaxy.
And then because everything has mass and because of the mass of the different objects, that is then simulated. So so in terms of the way gravity works, everything with mass pulls on everything else, and so once you add a new object that has mass, that then changes kind of the acceleration and the forces on all of the other bodies, and you then can watch the results play out in real time. So it's a space and gravity simulation that reveals the amazing beauty of our universe. Or at least that's kind of like my attempt or my goal. So, and then with the new one, we've added climate simulation, and so also then revealing kind of the fragility of the Earth. So being able to kind of experiment with atmosphere and the atmospheric properties and see, or the tilt of the Earth, and see how that will change things. So it is a simulator that is a realistic simulator of reality. That's completely interactive and adjustable and manipulatable, that helps people discover how amazing the universe is.
Now, in your in your feedback from the game, or your results from the first one, and I'm sure the results you're probably getting from the second one, does it skew heavily to destroying the Earth?
Well, I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do.
Seriously, it's one of the first things I did was like, okay, let's see a bunch of rocks. Actually, I think in the second one that I loaded up today, it was a bombardment of the moon, and so I got to see that destruction. But yeah, for the most part, when I walked by the PAX demo, they were just showing off how you guys simulated the Earth getting just demolished with everything you could throw at it.
Right. The alternate title of the game is 1,001 Ways to Destroy the Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it turns out that destruction is, can be amazingly beautiful, and actually is what essentially how our solar system formed. I mean, our solar system, a few billion years ago was a complete mess of objects flying around and colliding with each other. So if you look at any body like the moon or any of the the moons of the larger planets, they're just a complete they're crater fields because historically the solar system formed through just collision after collision. So it's kind of creation through destruction, but then turns out the explosions and two planets colliding should be the most glorious and wonderful thing that humanity has ever witnessed. And so trying to capture that over and over and over and over again, certainly with the new one, the collisions in the first one were really underwhelming, admittedly. And that's something we've really addressed in the sequel, in the second one, to really make collisions as spectacular and wonderful as they should be.
Yeah. What are some of the newer features for Universe Sandbox 2? I know you mentioned climate control, but I know obviously there's a step up in the looks department, correct?
Yes. It is a nearly 100% rewrite. So it's a brand new engine. We're using Unity. So it's cross-platform, Windows, Mac, Linux. It's not just me anymore. So it's an entire team. We've got an astronomer and a climate scientist and a dedicated physics programmer and a dedicated graphics programmer and another guy that's just a brilliant coder that ties all of that together. So being able to merge all of those, kind of take all those different talents and specializations, and so someone can really just focus on the visuals and depicting the sea ice and the snow on the Earth, and allowing the water levels to be adjustable. So that's just kind of what's been possible. But so collisions have been a major focus. The guy doing the physics has spent a lot of time. There's been lots of discussions about how this should work, and getting it and making the collision system work under a whole series of a very large scope of conditions. So you can run it at different time rates or different time steps. You can collide all different sized objects. Admittedly, still like two stars colliding. There's some problems there. Gas bodies aren't. We still haven't given that quite the focus they need. So a lot of our focus with collisions has been rocky bodies, essentially two rocky bodies colliding. But making collisions really amazing. Climate simulation. We have a climate scientist that's been adapting a climate model that was developed in the 1970s that you can now run in real time on a modern day desktop inside of a gravity simulator. So that then does crazy calculations and results, kind of gives us back temperatures at different latitudes. So from the pole to the equator to the other pole, and then we use that to draw the kind of ice cover on, so the land's also considering altitude. And so we get these really cool and amazing visuals of even just the Earth. Just load up the Earth in orbit around the sun. You can just see the sea ice and snow cover kind of grow underneath. It's almost like the Earth is breathing. You said it's like a year passing every second. And the Earth just looks like it's just kind of breathing. It's super cool. But then you can mess with it. It's not just an animation or kind of a canned effect. It's like you can change the tilt of the Earth, and that then affects the sea ice. You can move the Earth further out from the sun. That'll cause it to freeze over. You can get rid of all the CO2 on the planet. That will also, turns out, we didn't have CO2. We wouldn't have a greenhouse effect, and then we wouldn't have any heating. The world would completely freeze over. You can double CO2, which is a common kind of experiment that's done with climate models and climate science, and see how the Earth, gains 4 or 5 degrees, which is devastating. Terraforming is another kind of goal where do it in parts. It's not quite. It's not that feature is not fully fleshed out, but the ability to be able to seed, say, Mars with a thicker atmosphere and water, and then see that the water kind of collect on its surface and fill in the lower levels and the trenches, and then ultimately being able to perhaps we don't have it quite working yet, but because again we're still in alpha and there's still a lot to do, but simplistic life simulations, so you'll be able to actually make a green Mars. So not quite working yet, but pretty soon. So, and then deformations of craters, and that actually affecting the kind of the elevation of the planet. The gravity itself is completely rewritten from the original.
Yeah.
Where it's just, I admittedly, it was kind of at the edge of my capability when it kind of came to the math behind that, and the guy we've got working on that now, who actually lives in Denmark, interestingly, Thomas, he's just brilliant, just completely understands all this, and has just been doing a super amazing job, and there's all kind of like subtle features to it that you wouldn't necessarily know, like it's not really obvious, and if you list all the features, it's like, well, what does that do? Well, it makes gravity work correctly. So if you speed up time, the simulation doesn't fly apart. It automatically kind of calculates accuracy levels, and so there's a lot of really subtle things kind of behind the scenes that just make it just work like it should have worked. Work like you'd want it to work.
Right.
So,
Zufu in the chat room says, "Can we expect to give birth to planets? Are we able to create planets?"
Of sorts. I mean, you could like take a whole bunch of you could like take a whole bunch of asteroids and collide those together, and then that's going to lead to a larger planet with a new surface, and then you could add water to that. So one of the features I didn't mention is that we now have a material system. So we're actually defining planets and objects by their various compositions of, and it's kind of a simplistic model, but it's rock, iron, water, and hydrogen/helium. And so essentially with those kind of four materials, you can essentially define any planet. Whereas Earth is, I don't know, like about a third iron and 2/3 rock. We have then like 0.05% water or something like that. Pluto is 30% water. Turns out Pluto is, essentially a gigantic comet that's just so far out that it's frozen. But then if you move Pluto in closer to the sun, it develops a gigantic tail. But to answer this question, can you create planets? Of sorts. If you take smaller objects and slide them all together, you can build something the size of the Earth, then continue to bombard it with additional asteroids and materials, or we have a feature called kind of a material dispenser, material gun of sorts. You can actually like fire out hydrogen or rock, and so you could like take the Earth and fire hydrogen at it, and then assuming its mass was enough that it could maybe hold on to the hydrogen, that it wouldn't escape the atmosphere instantly, then you could actually turn that into a gas giant. So,
man, I love your game. God, I love this. I love this. There's something about your gravity simulator, your Earth destroying simulator, Universe Sandbox and Universe Sandbox 2, both that just appeal to me in such a way that I can do it. You're right. It is a sandbox, but there's just so much freedom to see what could happen, what would happen. You have all these different things that you can test out. What if Jupiter was the closest planet to the sun? What if where would things be for us, for Earth? How would our solar system look in different ways? And then you've also got simulations where you can see or look at stars that are far beyond anything that we can see, or at least that we can see with the naked eye type of thing, or maybe that we can see that are very tiny to us, but we can look at those in such a new way, 3D perspective, and again, we can simulate those. We can change their gravity, and we can change their mass. There's just something about that ability to, I guess maybe what it does for me is it gives me space travel without being able to space travel. And that's something that, I think recently, space travel getting privatized, correct?
Yeah, well, that's happening as well. So,
yeah, exactly. Somebody had mentioned something in the chat room, and I don't know if they were just joking because we had just gotten done talking about Oculus Rift. Is there any Rift support for Universe Sandbox? Are you guys maybe working on that?
We implemented Rift support. We actually implemented about a year ago. To be fair, it's a neglected feature, and we haven't updated it with the latest SDK for the DK2, so the head tracking. So, yes, the plan is so it's there. It might work kind of, but VR support is on the list of planned features.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. I seriously, I could talk to you for another hour and a half. Honestly, we could keep going into this thing. I am just a huge fan of space in general, but what you guys do really love Universe
thank you very
Sandbox
much.
too. And so it is available. Where can people pick it up?
UniverseSandbox.com. So if you go to our website or just search for Universe Sandbox on Google, that'll take you right to our website. That's the only place you can buy the second one. Again, you buy it through a Humble widget, and then you get a Steam code. You access it and then you can activate it on Steam. Not yet available on Steam. That's going to happen sometime next year. But what you buy is going to become the version that is eventually launched on Steam. So still very early, and there's a lot of improvements still to make and problems to solve. But it's also super compelling, I think, certainly already. So we're really excited. The whole team is excited to have released it and let people play it. And yeah, it's my favorite thing. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work on it, improve it, and provide opportunities for people to explore the universe in a way that has never been done before.
Thank you again so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it, and congratulations and best of luck to everything that comes your way in the future.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. Thank you appreciate it.
Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye. That was Dan Dixon for Universe Sandbox and Universe Sandbox 2. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about some Destiny. We'll be back with more in-game chat in just a moment. Here's music from Silent Hill. And welcome back to In-Game Chat. That is Lavos' theme from Chrono Trigger. We're going to talk about Destiny for the remainder of the show. Or Shooting Cave Simulator, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But here's the thing. James and I didn't go into what we had been playing because it's going to take a full segment to talk about Destiny. I know we put in some talk about this last week. However, James had not played the game. Sunday.
I had no interest in playing the game. I canceled my... I would like to make it very clear. I don't really, we don't... There's no way to really rightly review this game. But if ever there was a game in need of review, of real, honest, critical review, this is possibly it. And it has gotten it in various places. You have to go find a place that you appreciate, a situation for any particular review site that you can identify with, read it, and see what they have to say about it. But yeah, I had not intended to play it. And, I said as much on last week's show. I made it very clear that played the alpha. I was really turned around by... I had suspicions. I didn't... It had a smell to it, right? Not a necessarily a bad way. It just wasn't my thing. I could see into it. We all know a little bit about how Bungie works as a company and how the things they're likely to produce. And so I had my opinions kind of unformed and unfounded. Playing the alpha really turned me around on some of the core concepts. Playing the beta really made me feel like there wasn't going to be much past those core concepts. And reading a lot of the early opinions, reading a lot of the individual user review threads, and ultimately some of the real critical responses, it was very clear that this was a game that wasn't matching expectations. And as we have always said, we must all individually, manage our own expectations. You can't have someone else managing them for you. And I think this is a good example of what happens when we allow someone else to guide our expectations. And Bungie, look, a lot of hype for a lot of games is generated honestly at the grassroots level. People who are fans of a developer, fans of a genre, fans of an idea, or just really need something to fill that game-shaped hole in their life at a particular moment. They will hype it. They will do everything they can to push it to extraordinary levels of expectation. I also think it's fair to say, and in this case, a lot of that just came directly from the developer. They did. They talked a huge game. They talked an enormous, enormous game. And simply put, the game they talked and the game they delivered are not the same game at all.
Right. So Sunday I get up and I log in and start playing Destiny, and a listener of ours, Brian, Starstealer, joined my fire team and started talking to me about, hey, you're playing Destiny, that's great. So James, he mentioned something about, was James drunk? And I said, I don't,
probably, but
I said,
what's
I
your
don't know.
question?
Yeah, I said, I don't know. Why do you ask? He's like, because he's playing Destiny. And I said, what? No, he's not. And I looked at my player list, and there your name was highlighted among the people playing Destiny. I thought, what? And I think I immediately joined in your fight. I said, let's go in and ask him what he was doing.
What are you doing here?
So, and you know what?
Did you not just
right
poo all over this?
Today,
did you not just do this?
Today when we were in your party and like 6 other people were in there, not necessarily Nathan, but Javier and a couple of others were asking about why you picked up the game. And I said, you know what? He'll probably explain that, because you explained it to me. Yeah. And I said, he'll probably explain that on the show tonight. So go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll put it very simply. One, I think it is incredibly important, and I think anyone who knows me or has listened long enough, I think criticism is an incredibly important thing. I think there is something bordering on a moral obligation, because this business is what it is, and it isn't a dispassionate business. It isn't. It is possibly the most passionate producer-consumer relationship in existence, and it is an expensive hobby. This is just console gaming, but referring back to what we were talking about in the previous hour, talking about the investments that go into playing things on the PC, even a baseline investment of a game for a consumer on the console is no joke. It is a serious thing. These aren't movies. They're not something that you can toss $7 to $15 at, and it's like, whatever, maybe. There are games that are offered at that level, but when it comes to really, really big budget, really, really heavily marketed games, I think it's incredibly important to critique it. And I went as far as I could on what I had seen. And to be honest, it's not far enough. We got no clout. Nobody's ever going to send me a review copy of a game. Not really. It happens occasionally, but not really. Even the people who have clout did not get proper review copies of the game, in time, at least. And in order to be involved in the critical discussion, in order to ever say anything meaningful about something, you got to play it. So I felt myself caught in between the part of us that likes to get together, that likes to think and speak critically from the perspective of generally older gamers, older, I guess I'm not supposed to use that word anymore, older game-playing people who have a very particular point of view. And I felt kind of bound between the consumer side, where I was like, I don't know if it's worth my money. I don't know. And the critical side, where it's like, well, this is very much the topic of conversation right now amongst a lot of people, and I can't participate in it if I haven't played. Second, I thought I'd maybe pick the game up later. But I realized there's a reason why I have talked in the past about playing MMOs, like jumping in launch day on MMOs. It's like, you don't know if this is going to be any good. And that's true. But I know it will never be like launch day again. Whatever else it might be, those first moments, those first days when people are collectively learning about a previously mysterious experience. And say what you will, Bungie did a very good job keeping the lid on this game. Past what we saw in the beta, nobody had any idea. There were not really any leaked pieces of information about the raid. They had invited people into it, but they kept the lid on tight. There was no data mining. Nobody had ripped apart much of the code to find all the secrets, whatever secrets there may have been. There was a mystery. And I realized earlier is far better than later, especially if suspicions are correct and the player base is going to drop off. So putting those two things together, knowing that I had friends that were out there involved in this thing, and I felt very much on the sidelines. And I was like, yes. Nobody was pressuring me to get it. Nobody was bothered by my opinions, that maybe it wasn't something worth buying. But I was like, okay, I'll do this. I've got a short list of things I want to spend money on. One of them's going to be on the console. If I have to, I'll trade it in, which isn't something that I care to do very often, if ever. So I really thought about it. I looked at what people were doing, thought about, where I felt I was mentally last Saturday night. Woke up Sunday morning, was like, okay.
If I gotta.
Yeah, and I knew it, and nobody was making me do it. It was entirely internal, and it was just like, let's see. Let me put my money down and see what it's like. So I went and I picked it up, and we started playing.
Yeah.
So yeah. The first most
and your
important
idea was that I'll get in my time with this, and I've got enough. You gave a number of reasons, and that was one of them, and the other one was that it's got a relatively high trade-in value right now, so I can put my time into it, take it back, get that credit towards
something else.
Yeah.
If that's what I want to do.
Guaranteed $40. Right now,
yeah, like games, and yes, it's very distasteful for me. You have to understand. I don't like buying games and trading them in. I don't do that.
But you have no way of renting. Well, I mean, there's GameFly, but you don't have GameFly anymore.
I don't care for their thing. I believe it's too much of a gamble where new games are concerned.
Yeah, it just feels like a high-price rental to me when you do it.
Well, no, it is. It is certainly a high-price rental. It's worse even if you can't turn your rental around. If you can't dedicate time and get this played, done, fully digested, turned around and back to them in 5 days, you're better off just buying the game. And that's if they send it to you on launch day. So that's a separate conversation, but I just didn't feel like doing that. So, the very first lesson that I learned, and I think the most important lesson, is that this game is not better with friends.
It's the only way.
It is the only way to play this game.
It is.
The only way, in my opinion, and I know that that's a form of exaggeration, but I honestly think the only way to play this game is with friends. I whipped through it. I mean, it took me minutes, it felt like, to get back to where I was in the beta. I had level 9 after 3.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It was all the same stuff. It was very much what we had seen before. It was the beta up to that point. Scott and I got through. I think by Monday we had gotten through to the point where you would have been in the beta if you spent those 2 hours or 3 hours, I suppose it was, on the moon when they opened it up briefly. And I remember thinking, I have seen nothing new. I have seen nothing that they've given to me. I definitely feel all of the things that people have said negative about the game up to this point, but Scott and I are playing. This is fun. Obviously, the shooting mechanics are solid. That need not be said anymore. It's established. It's true in almost every case. But I remember you and I were playing together. You had to drop out. You got to get up early in the morning. I went from having fun. You left the team, and I was instantly bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
And it was the same activities available to me. I wasn't locked away from anything. So I would like to reiterate that is an absolute truth in my opinion. I don't think that this game even has a dull luster.
I mean, we talked about, I completely agree with you. The things that I do in the game now by myself is just to bide time while somebody is, hey, I'm going to go eat dinner real quick and I'll be right back. It's just for me to hold myself over until my friends show up. Otherwise, if there is no guarantee that they're showing up, if there is, if I log on and there is nobody on for me to play with, I log off. If I log on because I'm waiting for you to come in the next 10 or 20 minutes, then I'm going to go, fart around and do whatever.
And again, I want to reiterate,
I'm going to go to the cave.
Just to the chat room. I'm not saying it's better with friends. I think that goes with many, many, many games. I'm not saying it's better with friends. I'm saying for me, it's intolerable without them. It is not simply made better. It is made playable to me with friends. And that begins, it's very difficult, right? It's very, very difficult. I tried to sum it up, at least my personal feelings about this. I tried to sum this up for RJ and Dennis. There is an enormous list of things worth complaining about in this game. And I don't mean, that's not a nitpicky list. We're talking about major things that really should have been in there. There is nothing in Destiny. There's not one thing that I can find in Destiny that is wrong, that is bad. I don't think there are bad things in Destiny. Everything wrong with it is something that isn't there, if that makes sense.
You mentioned before, the more things...
It is the absence of things that to me seemed like an absolute no-brainer, or they seem like absolute first-level features to include in something that, no, it is not an MMO, but it functions in a lot of ways the same way an MMORPG would function. And some of the absolute basic, the absolute baseline community features and social contact and engineering features are absent. You are somehow relegated to the modern equivalent of smoke signals and weird like hand gestures. I mean, the best thing you can do when you're hanging out with a group of people to let them know that you'd like to group up, short of like there's no way to flag yourself as LFG. You can stand in a specified corner of the tower and dance, because that's an important thing to have, right?
Yeah.
But I can't flag myself as being willing to join up in an individual party. I can blind friend invite everyone that I see. Not friend invite them to a Destiny specific list. No, I must add them to my PSN friends list, which to me is a curated list. I want my friends there. I want in-game lists to be separate. It's like the difference between a simple friend in World of Warcraft and a BattleNet acquaintance, right? Somebody that you add to an exterior, cultivated social thing. These things are they're just absent, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The game would absolutely elevate itself with the inclusion of all of these different things. The story, such as it is, and it's been a lot of bad stuff has been said about it, and it is not good. I feel for people who bought the game believing that there would be a strong narrative of any sort. It's not there. This is not. It's thin, very, very thin, and not particularly well delivered, in my opinion, where it is. I mean,
have you gotten through all of the story?
We blitzed through it. We did the whole thing. The highlights are there's an important place where you're, awoken. Well, where your guardian, right? This resurrected this zombie savior, warrior thing. Who is being dragged through this modern world by his little ghost and told to do all these various things because it's incredibly important, and that's fine, is told that he has to go make contact with a hitherto uncontacted species, a race of people, the Awoken, right? The Awoken are one of the three races that a player can choose. So, I'm playing a human, but Scott's playing an Awoken, and we get to that part in the story, and the character's like, you got to go talk to the Awoken. Like, it's amazing. They're way over here, and nobody ever talks to them. And Scott's like, but I am them.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm in a cutscene as an Awoken, and you're telling me that nobody's here. And I'm not gonna say the L word, but this is a very dissonant moment. It's a very dissonant moment when the guy later on in the story threatens the Squish's character by putting a knife to his throat, and it's like,
right,
he's a robot.
Well, yeah.
Well, you can scratch his paint.
If you're a human, then that's a threat.
Yeah.
If you're an Awoken like me, that's a threat. But when you're an Exo, which is sentient robot, there is no threat.
No,
there.
And it's like, and again, it's the point isn't that this ruins the game. The point is that this pillar, right? There are the environmental things that you can do, the cooperative, team-based strikes and missions and all of these different things you can do. That is one serious pillar. The PvP aspect, competitive multiplayer, that is another pillar.
Mm-hmm.
But the story, the world, the narrative, all of the things that they very specifically said hoped would elevate the game as a world, the game as a collection of lore, would really elevate it into the level of all-time classics, all-time greats. It is a thin broth, man. There are enormous numbers of grimoire, what are called grimoire cards, grimoire entries. They are what would be considered a codex entry, right, or a journal entry, or something that would expand on the story. You have to go to a website or read through an app or something like that. Why it wasn't even remotely like... why in the world it wasn't anything like Mass Effect?
Yeah.
Or like they did in Halo.
Which was absolutely... Well, I mean, Mass Effect was lousy with lore. It was absolutely filled with it. It was a universe that had all of that amazing lore, but you never get all of that delivered to you over the course of the narrative. It's not possible. So they put it on your spaceship in a computer. And when you were taking some downtime and, feeding your fish or whatever, you go to the thing and you listen to the entries and you learn specifics about, the Asari and the Turians and how wars worked before you got there and what politics in the universe means and what this species did and what this ancient race was like. It mattered a lot that it was accessible from within the universe I was then inhabiting. That I was sitting down in front of this game, choosing to be a part of this story as this person, and I could learn more about it in context. They want me to intentionally remove myself from the context of the game to pick it up. It's a bad thing. And I only say so much about that because it was something that was expected. It was something that was, I don't want to say promised, but it was supposed to be a big deal. Having said that, the core gameplay loop is very solid. The gear loop is really, really, really tight. It doesn't make an awful lot of sense to me.
And the shooting is spot on. I mean,
right, that's what I'm saying. All of that's really good. Yeah. We ran, by the time we got to Thursday, we were totally hooks in. We were totally hooks in. But it's mostly because we had sort of gathered around with a group of people that were playing it and tried to find different
We were
ways
so hooks in that I was having later and bigger lunches at work so that I wouldn't have dinner at night because it was
right,
like,
so because you didn't want to interrupt that.
Yeah.
Because there are very important things to do, like exploit that cave where endless amounts of enemies drop.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing that I don't think would happen if some of the other basic functionality of, you run through a strike, right, which is like a normal mission type thing. Even at their baseline, they're designed to be more difficult and really ask a little bit more of the player as a group of three to cooperate and pay attention and help one another out and just be a little bit thoughtful about how you take care of a particular fight, right? There's usually waves of things, and then there's a big bad guy you got to fight at the end. And they're arduous compared to what happens in the rest of the world. There are many, many enemies. They're difficult, and they ask a lot of you. And that is the place in just about every other MMO where you put the loot. That's the piñata where you get all the stuff. There is your effort, and the rewards are commensurate with the effort. You run a strike here, and it's whatever. Here's some not real coins. Do this 30 more times, and you can buy a super great piece of gear. Mm-hmm. Or you can exploit misbehavior in the AI, where enemies spawn endlessly out of a particular cave in a particular place under particular circumstances, and the rate of loot drops is absolutely mind-boggling. It's astonishing. And these are, level 5 enemies dropping loot for level 20 characters. It's very weird. And I know that it's a balance issue. I know that this is, even though we've done it, very much an exploit. It's not a hack. It's not harming anyone else, but it is very much an exploit. And it is the best way to spend your time right now, once you have done a lot of these other activities. How in the world?
It combines all of that together,
right,
because it combines the great shooting, the great ability of playing with other friends,
and that tingle,
and that loot
twitch,
drop.
that sharp but wonderful thing when you see that loot drop. It's the same reason that you do Baron runs in Stratholme of World of Warcraft, and you do them for 10 years because that mount might drop, and every single time you get that that feeling, that Indiana Jones with the gold idol fingers thing that he did.
You wait for that one singular tone that indicates legendary.
Yes, and it's really, really that bing or something, that shaft of orange light in
Diablo 3.
In Diablo 3, or that blue or purple engram.
Although even
and that's fine. It's still a bit of a gamble, and I think that's okay. But I don't know. It's very odd, and I found us having a tremendous amount of fun doing that. And as bad as it felt, the guns are fantastic. Getting the loot is fun, and so there was a moment in time there, Thursday and Friday, when that was Destiny at its best for me.
Yeah.
And to be fair, we haven't really spent much time on the PvP. We know we have to do it. We're just really, really bad at it.
Yeah, I played one match today. That was it.
This is not the kind of place where we shine. I feel like the narrow FOV for me is manageable in the PvE, it absolutely hamstrings me in the PvP. And I'm just not very good at it. And I understand that a lot of people enjoy it. I can't speak intelligently about that. But how in the world they haven't identified, or maybe they have, some of the most fantastic and fun things in this game? How is there no strike or mission or even PvP segment based entirely on riding those speeder bikes? They are the best speeder bikey thing that has ever existed. I kid you not. When we're doing open world patrols, right? Zipping from place to place so that we can pick things up or find the gold loot chests hidden around the environment. And we're like zipping in those canyons of Mars.
Yeah.
Or like through the weird jungles in Venus. It was
especially the jungles in Venus.
It was speeder bike business from Return of the Jedi. I kid you not. Bumping up against each other, Luke to Scout Trooper style. They are just a joy to drive, and all they are is an A to B type thing. How are they not a core element of something much better? How are there not races in PvP? Or how are there not PvE
that brought
segments
to us,
designed specifically around
that brought us
the
to our other
stuff.
questions of, why can't I do anything with my ship?
Right, why can't I do it? Like, there's already that sort of flying down a tunnel thing when I go from the Earth to the Moon or from the Moon to Venus or something like that. It is begging, pleading, screaming for a Star Fox segment or one of those
and it's also
space segments out of the Old Republic.
Yeah, it's also screaming, and this is another problem that we kind of just hit on yesterday and today. It's screaming for larger co-op component. And by that I mean open it up to more than just 3 people doing anything on a map. Strikes limited to 3 people, and okay, you might could put some more in there, but I can live with that. But missions being limited to 3 people, you could put some more in there. Patrolling the world should be, sure, you and 6, you and 8, you and ever how many can go and just patrol. Why not? Go out there and just go and have fun. Can't even do that. It's all limited to 3 people. If you want any more than that, you can do 6, but that's only when you're going to PvP.
Right. And the raid is 6. But the
raid is 6 as well.
The raid is 6,
okay,
but
sorry.
The raid is 6, but the raid has an incredible threshold for entry.
Only friends.
Only friends, which we have. That's the problem.
And only level
26.
26.
And it is not the casual.
And you mentioned something about if you join it, you get locked into that.
I actually don't know what their raid IDs and stuff.
All
I don't
right.
know how their save concept works, so I can't say too much about it. But there is a save state for sticking with a specific group of people.
Yeah,
so
Kelly says, me and my friends race to the cave. Does that count?
No, right, but what I'm saying is building some kind of core gameplay loop around it because it is so good. There is one mission in on the moon. The was it Sword of Crota? Is that what it's called?
The sword, yes.
The Sword of Crota. How in the world there isn't where you go into this place and you have to find this ancient sword. It's a thing of power. Blah blah blah. Doesn't matter. One of the things that's been leveled against the game is that there's not enough class diversity. There's Titan, Warlock, Hunter. They're all essentially just things that shoot, and it's all just first-person shooter. And I like my Titan. He can become a bit more of a defensive and support thing, which I think is great. I was banking on that, and I do like it. But you pick this sword up and you go into third person and you just absolutely demolish all these enemies over the course of like 3 minutes, and it's the only time it happens. How in the world there aren't more moments like this? And it was one of the most fun moments I had in all of the story stuff because it wasn't just a simple thing. You could tell there was obviously a basis for making this as fun as it was. How there wasn't more built on it, I don't know. Either they don't know what to do with all the really, really fantastic core competencies they have here, or they do, and they're going to ask you to pay for it later. I don't know. All I know at the moment is I really do want to go home and want to shoot those enemies coming out of that cave again.
And we're going to do that, and we're probably going to stream some of that on our PS4, so make sure you look for that a little bit later on tonight. AC Wraith, Deter Lavos, Dotson232, Grazit, Gwenny3K, Cali Synth, Medusa's Mirren, Neptura, Sigel, Shiguri, STM Fuller, W. Matthew, and Zufu. Thanks, everybody in the chat room. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, listening on the stream, even on the radio, wherever you listen to us. We appreciate it. And everybody who gets us each week from iTunes. We also go to ingamechat.net, follow us on Twitter, find us on Facebook, check out our forums at colonyofgamers.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're playing Destiny, we have a clan. If you're on Steam, we have a Steam group that you can join up with us over there and play with other listeners and stuff. So thanks, everybody. We will see you next Saturday. Have a great week. Here is music from Alan Wake. This is Welcome to Bright Falls. We'll see you later.